The way we feel about another person, or about objects, is often bound up in associations that have no direct connection with the person or objects at all. Edgeworks Entertainment presents Short Transmissions. Stories to rocket you into space. Tonight, Sentiment Inc. by Poul Anderson, Part 1 of 3. Source, Gutenberg.org. She was 22 years old, fresh out of college, full of life and hope, and all set to conquer the world. Colin Fraser happened to be on vacation on Cape Cod, where she was playing summer stock, and went to more shows than he had planned. It wasn't hard to get an introduction, and before long, he and Judy Sanders were seeing a lot of each other. "Of course," she told him one afternoon on the beach. "My real name is Harkness." He raised his arm, letting the sand run through his fingers. The beach was big and dazzling white around them. The sea galloped in with a steady roar, and a gull rode the breeze overhead. "What was wrong with it?" he asked. "For a professional moniker, I mean." She laughed and shook the long hair back over her shoulders. "I wanted to live under the name of Sanders," she explained. "Oh, yes, of course. Winnie the Pooh," he grinned. "Soulmates, that's what we are." It was about then that he decided he'd been a bachelor long enough. In the fall, she went to New York to begin the upward grind: understudy, walk-on parts, shoestring theaters, and roles in outright turkeys. Fraser returned to Boston for a while, but his work suffered. He'd keep dashing off to see her. By spring, she was beginning to get places. She had a talent, and everybody enjoys looking at a brown-eyed blonde. His weekly proposals were also beginning to show some real progress, and he thought that a month or two of steady siege might finish the campaign. So he took leave from his job and went down to New York himself. He'd saved up enough money and was good enough in his work to afford it, and anyway, he was his own boss, consulting engineer, specializing in mathematical analysis. He got a furnished room in Brooklyn and filled in his leisure time, as he thought of it, with some special math courses at Columbia. And he had a lot of friends in town, in a very curious variety of professions. Next to Judy, he saw most of the physicist Swarovski, who was an entertaining companion, though most of his work was too top secret even to be mentioned. It was a happy period. There is always a jarring note, to be sure. In this case, it was the fact that Fraser had plenty of competition. He wasn't good-looking himself, a tall, gaunt man of 28, with a dark hatchet face and perpetually rumpled clothes. But still, Judy saw more of him than anyone else, and admitted she was seriously considering his proposal and no other. He called her up once for a date. "Sorry," she answered. I'd love to, Colin, but I've already promised tonight, just so you don't worry. It's Matthew Snyder." "The industrialist?" "Uh-huh. He asked me in such a way it was hard to refuse. But I don't think you have to be jealous, honey. Bye now." Fraser lit his pipe with a certain smugness. Snyder was several times a millionaire, but he was close to 60, a widower of notably dull conversation. Judy wasn't, well, no worries, as she'd said. He dropped over to Swarovski's apartment for an evening of chess and bull shooting. It was early in May, when the world was turning green again, that Judy called Fraser up. "Hi," she said breathlessly. "Busy tonight?" "Well, I was hoping I'd be, if you get what I mean," he said. "Look, I want to take you out for a change. I just got some unexpected money, and damn it, I want to feel rich for an evening." He scowled into the phone. "I don't know." "Oh, get off of it, Galahad. I'll meet you in the Dixie lobby at 7, okay?" She blew him a kiss over the wires and hung up before he could argue further. He sighed and shrugged. Why not if she wanted to? They were in a little Hungarian restaurant with a couple of Tzigani strolling about, playing for them alone, it seemed, when he asked for details. "Did you get a bonus or what?" "No," she laughed at him over her drink. "I've turned a guinea pig." "Ugh, I hope you quit that job before we're married." It's a funny deal," she said thoughtfully. it interests you. I've been out a couple of times with this Snyder, and if anything was needed to drive me into your arms, well, Colin, it's his political lectures. Well, bless the Republican Party. He laid his hand over hers. She didn't withdraw it, but she frowned just a little. Colin, I want to get somewhere before I marry. I see a bit of the world, the theatrical world, before turning Hausfrau. Don't be so, oh, never mind. I like you anyway. Sipping her drink and setting it down again. Well, to carry on with the story, I finally gave Comrade Snyder the complete brush off, and I must say he took it very nicely. But this morning, he called asking me to have lunch with him, and I did after he explained. It seems he's got a psychiatrist friend doing research, measuring brainstorms or something, and, do I mean storms? Waves, I guess. And anyway, he wants to measure as many different kinds of people as possible, and Snyder had suggested me. I was supposed to come in for 3 afternoons running, about 2 hours each time, and I'd get $100 per session. Said Fraser. I didn't know psych research was that well heeled. Who is this mad scientist? His name is Kennedy. Oh, by the way, I'm not supposed to tell anybody, so they want to spring it on the world as just a surprise or something. But you're different, Colin. I'm excited, and I wanted to talk to somebody about it. Sure, he said. You had a session already? Yes, my first one was today. I mean, it's a funny place to do research. Kennedy's got this big suite on Fifth Avenue, right up on the classy district. Beautiful office. The name of his outfit is Sentiment Inc. Why should a research team take such a name? Well, go on. Oh, there isn't much else to say. Kennedy was very nice. He took me into a laboratory full of all sorts of dials and meters and blinking lights and, what do you call them? Those things that make, wiggly pictures? Oscilloscopes. You'll never make a scientist, my dear. Oh, she grinned. But I know one scientist who'd like to... Never mind. Anyway, he sat me down in a chair and put bands all around my wrists and ankles, and just like the hot squad, and a big thing like a beauty parlor hair dry over my head, and then he fiddled with his dials for a while making notes, and then he started saying words at me, showing me pictures. Some of them were very pretty, and some were ugly, some funny, some downright horrible. Anyway, that's all there was to it. After a couple of hours, he gave me a check for $100 and told me to come back tomorrow. Fraser rubbed his chin. Apparently he was measuring the electric rhythms corresponding to pleasure and dislike. I'd no idea anybody made an encephalograph that accurate. Well, said Judy, I've told you why we're celebrating. Now, come on. The regular orchestra's tuning up. Let's dance. They had a rather wonderful evening. Afterward, Fraser lay awake for a long time, not wanting to lose his state of happiness and sleep. He considered sleep a hideous waste of time. If he lived to be 90, he'd have spent almost 30 years unconscious. Judy was engaged for the next couple of evenings, and Fraser himself was invited to dinner at Swarovski's the night after that. So it wasn't till the end of the week that he called her again. "Hello, sweetheart," he said exuberantly. "How's things?" I refer to Charles Adams' things, of course. "Oh, Colin." Her voice was very small, and it trembled. "Look, I've got 2 tickets to HMS Pinafore, so put on your own pinafore and meet me." "Colin, I'm sorry, Colin. I can't." Huh? He noticed how odd she sounded, and a leadenness grew within him. "You aren't sick, are you?" "Colin, I'm going to be married." "What?" "Yes, I'm in love now. Really in love. I'll be getting married in a couple of months." But, I didn't want to hurt you." He heard her begin to cry. "But who? Who?" "It's Matthew," she gulped. "Matthew Snyder." He sat quiet for a long while until she asked if he was still on the line. "Yeah," he said tonelessly. "Yeah, I'm still here, after a fashion." Shaking himself. "Look, I've got to see you. I want to talk to you." "I can't." "You sure as hell can," he said harshly. They had met at a quiet little bar which had often been their rendezvous. She watched him with frightened eyes while he ordered martinis. "All right," he said. "What's the story?" He could barely hear her. There isn't a story. I suddenly realized I loved Matt, and that's all." "Snyder!" He made it a curse. "Remember what you told me about him before?" "Well, it felt different then," she whispered. "He's a wonderful man when you get to know him." "And rich." He suppressed the words and the thought. "What's so wonderful specifically?" he asked. Briefly, her face was rapt. Fraser had seen her looking at him that way now and then. "Go on," he said grimly. "Enumerate Mr. Snyder's good qualities. Make a list. He's courteous. He's cultured, intelligent, young, handsome, amusing to hell." "Why, Judy?" "I don't know," she said in a high, almost fearful tone. "I just love him, and that's all." She reached over the table and stroked his cheek. "I like you a lot, Colin. Find yourself a nice girl and be happy." His mouth drew into a narrow line. "There's something funny here," he said. "Is it blackmail?" "No." She stood up, spilling her drink, and the flare of temper showed him how overwrought she was. "He just happens to be the man I love, and that's enough of you. Goodbye, Mr. Fraser." He sat watching her go. Presently he took up his drink, gulped it barbarously, and called for another. Juan Martinez had come from Puerto Rico as a boy and made his own way ever since. Fraser had gotten to know him in the army, and they had seen each other from time to time since then. Martinez had gone into the private eye business and made a good thing of it. Fraser had to get past a very neat-looking receptionist to see him. "Hi, Colin," said Martinez, shaking his hands. He was a small man with a large nose and beady black eyes that made him resemble a sympathetic mouse. "You look like the very devil." "I feel that way too," said Fraser, collapsing into a chair. "You can't go on a 3-day drunk without showing it." "Well, what's the trouble? Cigarette?" Martinez held out a pack. "Girlfriend give you the air?" "As a matter of fact, yes. That's what I want to see you about." "Oh, this isn't a Lonely Hearts Club," said Martinez. "And I've told you time and time again, a private isn't a wisecracking Superman. Our work is 99% routine, and for the other 1%, we call the police." "Let me give you the story," said Fraser. He rubbed his eyes wearily as he told it, and at the end he sat staring at the floor. "Well," said Martinez, "it's too bad and all that, but what the hell? There are other dames. New York has more beautiful women per square inch than any other city, except Paris. Latch on to somebody else, or if you want, I can give you a phone number." "You don't understand," said Fraser. "I want you to investigate this. I want to know why she did it." Martinez squinted through a haze of smoke. "Snyder's a rich and powerful man," he said. "Isn't that enough?" "No," said Fraser, too tired to be angry at the hint. "Judy isn't that kind of girl, and neither is she the kind to go overboard in a few days, especially when I was there. I mean, sure, that sounds conceited, but damn it, I know she cared for me." "Okay. You suspect pressure was brought to bear?" "Yes. It's hard to imagine what. I mean, I called up Judy's family in Maine, and they said they were all right, no worries, nor do I think anything in her own life would give a blackmailer or an extortionist anything to go on. But still, I want to know." Martinez drummed the desktop with nervous fingers. "I'll look into it for you, if you insist," he said, "though it'll cost you a pretty penny. Rich men's lives aren't easy to pry into if they've got something they want to hide. But I don't think we'd find out much. Your case seems to be only one of a rash of similar ones in the past year." "Huh?" Fraser looked up sharply. Yeah, I follow all the news and remember the odd facts. There've been a good dozen cases recently where beautiful young women suddenly marry rich men or become their mistresses. It doesn't always get into the papers, but I got my contacts. I know. In every instance, there is no obvious reason. In fact, the dames seem very much in love with the man, and the era of the gold digger is pretty well gone. Fraser sat staring out the window. It didn't seem right that the sky should be so full of sunshine. Well, said Martinez, you don't need me. You need a psychologist. Psychologist? By God, Juan, I'm going to give you a job anyway. Fraser leapt to his feet. You're going to check into an outfit called Sentiment Inc. Short Transmissions was created by Heather Johnson Yu, produced and edited by Rachel Emerson, music by Molly Walburn, brought to you by Edgeworks Nebula. Tune in next week for the next episode of Short Transmissions.
Edgeworks Nebula.